Have you ever felt like someone understood you even before you said a word? Just a fleeting moment when your eyes met and something passed between you without needing to be spoken. Maybe it was a coworker turning around at the exact moment you were thinking about them. Maybe it was a close friend texting you just as you were about to call. At first, we call it coincidence, but the longer you live, the more you realize that nothing in this universe is random. Your soul is speaking, and your thoughts, though invisible and delicate like breath, carry a power greater than any spoken word. I used to be a skeptic. I believed thoughts were just thoughts, stuck inside our skulls, never touching the outside world, until one day, everything began to shift. It was a windy autumn afternoon, golden sunlight pouring through the window, and I suddenly felt like someone could see right through me. A soft current of energy ran down my spine. In that moment, I thought of an old friend I hadn't seen in years. Just seconds later, my phone buzzed. A message appeared. I don't know why, but I just thought of you. I was speechless. There was no plan, no scientific explanation. Only a sacred feeling remained, as if a glowing thread stretched between us across space. Invisible, but so real my heart could feel every vibration of it. That night, I opened the Bible. My eyes landed on a verse. You know when I sit and when I rise. You understand my thoughts from afar. Psalm 139:2. Those words opened a door in my mind. I understood then. It's not just people who can feel each other's thoughts. The Source, the Creator, placed that power within us from the beginning. When a soul awakens, its thoughts begin to carry creative force. They're not just brain activity. They are sacred language, the kind of language every soul understands, even without words. From that moment, I began to see the world differently. I noticed that whenever I thought of someone with love, they would appear. Whenever I worried, reality echoed that fear. Thoughts are like seeds of energy, sown into the soil of the universe, quietly growing into lived experience. We think we're just thinking, but in truth, we are creating. In the days that followed, I learned to sit in silence and observe my own thoughts. I realized they weren't still. They moved like waves, sending out vibrations. Some were light, like the wind. Others were heavy, like stones, capable of piercing someone else's energy. And when the heart and mind beat as one, when our intentions are pure, those waves begin to resonate with the energy of all things. In that state, the world around you seems to respond to every breath. A thought passes, and reality subtly shifts, as if even the air is listening to your call. I'm not talking about magic or fantasy. I'm talking about the deep interaction between the human mind and the energy of the universe. Maybe you've experienced it without realizing. When you walk into a room and everyone falls silent, not because of what you said, but because your energy changed the air. When you think kindly of someone and they suddenly seem lighter. When you're burdened and others feel heavy without knowing why. Thoughts are frequencies. They always transmit, always ripple, always return. At first, I was afraid. I thought, if my thoughts can affect others, isn't that an enormous responsibility? But then, a quiet voice within me answered, it's not a burden. It's a calling. The chosen ones aren't special. They're simply those who are ready to awaken and take responsibility for the energy they emit. I remember looking up at the night sky. Thousands of stars glittered like thoughts sent out into the universe. Each star, a whisper, an intention. And the universe, in its infinite silence, still listens to every one of them, still responds with the coincidences we call miracles. Maybe you too have been answered by the universe in a meeting, a letter, or a glance that made your heart tremble. These are reflections of the thoughts you've sent out. And if you learn to listen, you'll realize that your soul is being guided, step by step. As I write these words, I remember a very real feeling, like an unseen hand resting gently but firmly on my shoulder, a reminder, you are not alone. And I know you'll feel that too when your heart opens, because this journey doesn't begin in the outside world. It starts within, from the place where every thought, every breath, every vibration carries its own energy code. When you recognize that, you'll understand you are a channel of the Creator's energy. Every thought you send out, when lit with love and faith, becomes a prayer heard in the deepest layers of the universe. No one needs to teach you how to do this. Your soul already knows. It's only waiting for you to remember. And when that memory awakens, you'll begin to notice the signs repeating numbers, small events full of meaning, that strange sense of déjà vu. That's how the sacred world speaks to you. That's how it confirms you're on the right path. That night, as I watched the moonlight spill across the earth, I knew I had stepped into a journey with no return. A journey to discover the power of thought, the connection between soul and reality. I knew what was coming would be deeper, stronger, beyond all logic, no longer theory, no longer doubt, only the belief that when the human mind becomes still, it begins to speak the same language as God. Light quietly spreads. My heartbeat slows. I close my eyes and feel my breath blend into the unseen current around me. Something is being awakened, the power of focused intention, waiting to be named. And so, the real story begins right here, when you realize that sometimes just one pure thought is enough to move the world. Everything began with a small intention, growing slowly like a wave in the quiet sea. I no longer saw thoughts as vague currents, but as streams of light, carrying weight, direction, and an invisible pull. And I began to listen, to see where that light would lead me. That morning, as I sat in the office surrounded by the sound of typing and cold fluorescent light, I felt a strange energy around me. It wasn't from the noise or the people nearby. It came from within, as if the space around me was echoing every thought I carried. A face appeared in my mind, quiet and uninvited, the face of a coworker I'd been avoiding for weeks. Between us lingered a silent distance, misunderstandings, silence, and an invisible cold. I took a deep breath, letting the thought become clear. I didn't wish for them to call. I didn't force anything. I simply focused on the feeling of wanting peace, wanting them to be well. And as I did, something in the air began to shift. The space around me thickened, as if an invisible current was spreading. My breath slowed, my heartbeat sinking to a strange new rhythm. In my mind, I pictured a fine thread of light stretching between us, thin as silk, but unbreakable. With each inhale, the light grew warmer, brighter, and with each exhale, it reached farther beyond walls, beyond space, to wherever they were in that moment. Time moved slowly. I said nothing. I didn't text. I didn't act. I just sat there, letting my intention dissolve into the air like a quiet wave traveling through the city. Then suddenly, my phone vibrated on the desk. A message appeared. Simple. I wanted to ask you something. No explanation. No reason. They didn't know that just moments before, I had sent out a pure, wordless call through the energy of intention. I smiled, not because I had influenced someone, but because I knew focused intention is a prayer spoken without words. When your mind reaches out to someone with the frequency of love and harmony, the universe clears a path. The walls in their mind soften. Their soul senses the wave, even if their logic cannot explain it. I sat still, feeling a quiet joy, the joy of touching the heartbeat of reality. And once again, a verse from the Bible surfaced in my heart, like a reply from the light. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 30, 7-4. When we rest in joy and trust, the true desires of the soul begin to find their way to us, not through force, but through the magnetic pull of pure energy. I began observing this principle in every part of life. When I focused on gratitude, more things to be grateful for appeared. When I thought of light, people carrying light entered my life. And when I opened my heart to healing, those in need of healing found their way to me. You may have heard of the law of attraction, but this is more than a psychological principle. It is a law of the soul, because when thoughts carry energy, they don't just reach others, they invite matching energy from the universe to return. One day, I decided to try this intentionally. I sat in a cafe, looking out through the glass where sunlight poured in soft rays. I thought of my aging mother far away. I pictured her smiling, surrounded by warmth and peace. I didn't try to change anything. I simply held that image and felt it. An hour later, she called. She said, "I don't know why, but this morning I felt lighter, as if someone had just sent me a wish for peace." I said nothing. Tears welled in my eyes. I knew this was no coincidence. It was a return of intention, a message of the soul sent across distance. In that moment, I understood focused intention is the bridge from soul to soul. When we think of someone with love, they feel it not through words, but through waves of energy. If thoughts are seeds, then focused intention is the sunlight that helps them grow. And when that intention is pure, nothing can stop it. It travels farther than any physical distance, beyond walls, beyond cities, and sometimes beyond time. The universe works like an invisible ocean, and each of us is a ripple on its surface. When we send out waves of love, the great sea echoes back with the same frequency, creating the coincidences we call miracles. I realized that this power doesn't come from control, it comes from surrender. When we let go of the need to prove and hold only pure trust, our energy becomes clear, and in that clarity, focused intention becomes a guiding light for others. As I sat still, eyes closed, I felt my heartbeat blending with the rhythm of the world. Every sound, every movement melted into one. In that moment, I was no longer a person trying to send a thought. I was part of a sacred current breathing with the universe. Maybe this is what the ancients called telepathy. But to me, it's not some mystical power. It's a natural truth when the soul is open. If you've ever felt someone thinking of you, if you've ever remembered someone and they suddenly appeared, know that energy is moving. There is no real boundary between us, only different frequencies dancing in God's grand symphony. And once you understand this, you begin to live differently. Every thought becomes more intentional, every word more thoughtful, because you know that everything you send out travels in real waves, touching the hearts of others. I looked up at the afternoon sky. The sunlight shimmered through the window like a soft halo. A quiet question rose in my heart. If one simple intention can connect two minds, could an image formed in the mind reshape the world? And in that glow, I knew the answer was waiting deeper, within where imagination becomes command. And what we see in our minds begins to shape reality. The morning passed in silence. Sunlight slipped through the curtain, casting thin golden streaks across the floor like threads of silk. I sat there, still attuned to the invisible rhythm of the world around me, and realized something strange. When the mind becomes still enough, the images we create inside begin to seep into the reality outside. At that moment, I was preparing for an important meeting. The project had taken months, but I knew that today's outcome would decide everything. The air was thick with pressure. Everyone carried their own quiet worries. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and followed what my heart whispered, visualize with faith. I didn't pray for victory. I didn't wish to persuade. I simply pictured the room filled with light, everyone smiling, and the director's voice firm but warm, approving the proposal. I saw every small detail, the glances, the gestures, the soft clink of a coffee cup on its saucer, even the rhythm of my own breath in that space. I saw it. I heard it. I felt it as if it were already happening. A warmth rose in my chest. Time seemed to pause. All fear and doubt faded like early morning mist. Only one thing remained, absolute certainty that what I had envisioned was already written into the flow of the universe. When I opened my eyes, nothing outside had changed, but inside, everything had. A quiet stillness radiated from me, like a soft, steady light. And then, as the meeting began, something remarkable happened. The director walked in. His voice echoed just as I had heard in my mind. I've reviewed this plan, and I believe this is exactly what we need. Everyone at the table turned to look at me, a few nodding in agreement. I could hardly believe it, not because I was surprised, but because everything unfolded exactly as I had seen it. In that moment, I understood. Visualization is not mere imagination. It is the language of creation. When we envision with the heart, we speak to the universe in its native frequency. A verse from the Bible rang softly in my spirit, clear as a bell in stillness. Faith is the confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. Hebrews 11:1. Faith is not waiting for a miracle to appear. It is seeing the miracle before it arrives. And when your vision is clear enough, the world will reshape itself to reflect that image. I sat quietly after the meeting, overflowing with emotion. There were no words to describe the union of thought and reality. I only knew that in the moment you trust what you see within, more than what you see outside, you've touched the creative space of the divine. I began practicing this every day. Each morning, I would envision my day, a smile, sunlight, gentle breath, work flowing with ease. And the more I visualized, the closer life came to what I saw. Not magic, not control, but resonance. The universe isn't working against us. It is simply reflecting us. I remember one time, sitting in the crowd at a busy train station, I imagined a peaceful space amidst the chaos. Within minutes, the world around me seemed to slow. The noise softened, the air lightened. A stranger sitting nearby smiled gently at me, as if they too had felt the shift in energy. And I realized, what we visualize doesn't just shape our own life. It touches the souls who come into the field of that energy. If your mind is a canvas, then emotion is the color, and faith is the painter's hand. When those three align, the image in your mind is no longer a fantasy. It becomes a prophecy in motion. Some people will hear this and doubt, but those who have felt the world respond through impossible coincidences they know. We live in an ocean of energy. Every image we hold becomes a ripple across its surface. So try it. Close your eyes and imagine a day filled with light, where what you hope for has already happened. Not with desperate longing, but with gratitude before the gift arrives. When you do that, you open the door for reality to meet you at the frequency you've sent out. When I shared this with some friends, they asked, if everyone can do this, where's the line between creation and manipulation? I smiled and said, the line is in the intention. A thought born from love will create. A thought born from fear will destroy. The universe doesn't make mistakes, it simply reflects the energy you carry within. That's why, before you visualize anything, ask yourself, does this come from love? If yes, let it shine. If not, let it go. This story isn't to prove I'm special. It's to remind you that every soul holds this power. You can do this right now. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Picture what you want to send into the world, a moment of peace, a wave of healing, or simply the smile of someone you love. Don't force the outcome. Just see it, feel it, believe. Then let the current of spirit carry it to where it needs to go. If your heart is feeling this vibration now, if you believe the human mind can co-create reality, then join me in spreading this energy. Share this light so more souls can awaken from the sleep of doubt. You can leave a small mark, a like, a share, a subscribe, not just to support, but as an act of intention. A way of saying, I'm on this journey too. Every small action sends out a wave into the great sea of light we are building together. Because when one person believes, reality shifts. But when many believe together, the world begins to change. And in that shared vibration, I feel a new layer of energy, opening a place where visions don't stay locked inside the mind, but flow outward to touch others, like a stream of light connecting souls across space. In the final stillness, I hear the wind whispering, soft but certain. If thought can take shape, can it touch another soul? A question unfolds, drawing my spirit into the quiet depths of meditation, where thoughts do not simply drift away, but truly reach the hearts they were meant for. As we journey deeper into the world of thought, we begin to realize there is a place where words can no longer reach a place of stillness and pure intention. I found that doorway one quiet afternoon, as the last light of the day spilled across the porch and the whole world seemed to hold its breath. I was meditating, as I often do. No music, no soft lighting, only my heartbeat and slow, steady breath. At first, my mind was restless, like a stormy sea. Thoughts drifted in and out, old memories surfaced and sank. But when I began to observe instead of resist, everything gradually settled. No more waves, only calm waters. And in that calmness, the image of a friend appeared. Someone I knew was carrying the weight of deep pain. I didn't try to fix anything. I simply held them in my mind, surrounded by light. I imagined my breath as a stream of golden light, traveling through space, reaching them, soothing the cracks in their heart. It felt so real I could sense warmth on my own skin, even though they were miles away. In that moment, the universe no longer had limits. I was no longer a person sitting on a wooden floor, but a channel for energy, part of a vast river of light. My thoughts blended into the breath of the universe, spreading outward, light as wings. And then, within the immense stillness, I heard a whisper, not from outside, but deep within. It echoed, like a voice from ancient time. I hear you. I wasn't afraid. On the contrary, a calmness spread through my body. I knew then that my thought had moved beyond the boundary of awareness and was now traveling through the deeper layers of that person's soul. I just sat there, sensing the gentle stream of light. The next day, that friend called me. Their voice was lighter. Something had shifted, peaceful, brighter. I don't know why, they said, but last night I dreamed of a light wrapping around me, and when I woke up, everything felt clear. I smiled, saying nothing about what I had done, because I knew no explanation was needed. When one soul touches another, words become unnecessary. And in that moment, a verse from the Psalms rang in my heart like a breeze. The Lord confides in those who fear him. Psalm 25-14. Perhaps this is what that covenant means. A sacred connection between souls that needs no language, where loving energy becomes the flow of God. I began calling this gift thought transference. Not a miracle, but a natural capacity of the mind when it enters deep stillness. In that quiet, all boundaries dissolve. Thoughts become wings, soaring free. I remembered the number I'd been seeing everywhere lately, 333. Every time I checked the clock, it was 3:33. On receipts, license plates, it kept showing up. At first, I thought it was coincidence, but then I knew the universe was speaking. 333 is the sign of guardian angels, a message that you are being guided and protected by the realm of light. Silently, I said, "If I'm on the right path, please continue to guide me." And as if in reply, a gentle breeze moved through the room, causing the candle before me to flicker. That was when I understood thought transference isn't just about sending thoughts. It's also about opening yourself to receive. When you truly listen, you'll see that the universe is always responding through numbers, sounds, intuition, even the glance of a stranger passing by. So now, when I meditate, I no longer try to do anything. I simply become present. When someone appears in my mind, I send them light. When I feel heavy, I let the light return to me. No longer active or passive, just a natural exchange between soul and soul. The more I practiced, the more I realized energy sent from a pure heart can move across space, even time. Once, I thought of my grandmother who had passed. In that instant, I heard her laugh, soft, warm, real. I knew then, love never dies. It only changes form, and when we open our hearts, it returns to us. On quiet nights, as I sit in the dark, that light appears again, not bright or dazzling, just a soft glow like breath. I feel I'm not alone. I know that beyond the invisible veil, other souls are with me, co-creating this stream of light. The universe, in all its vastness, is not just space. It is a living field of energy, where every thought has a voice. And once you understand that, you no longer try to shout at life, you begin to whisper to it. And when your whisper is quiet enough, life whispers back. If you're hearing these words now, maybe it's not by chance. Maybe your soul is being reminded you too carry this power. The power to feel, to connect, and to heal with your thoughts. If you've been seeing the number 333 on your phone, a bill, a clock, know that it's a message. You're not walking alone. Angels are near, guiding you back to your light. Let go and receive. I slowly opened my eyes. The afternoon light had turned amber. The world was still, as if it were holding its breath with me. A deep peace settled into every cell of my being. I knew then, what had just happened wasn't a daydream. It was a living truth of the soul. I smiled gently, knowing this. When we send out healing energy, we are also healing ourselves. When we think kindly of someone, we are cleansing the shadows within us. Thought is the bridge between the human and the divine, between the seen and the unseen. And when that bridge opens, we begin to walk into the land of pure creation, where all things are possible. In the final breath of that meditation, I heard a soft question rising from within like an invitation. If thought can touch another mind, what happens when words are spoken with the power of the soul? That question opened a new doorway where language becomes vibration, and every word carries a frequency that can transform a space. A new chapter of the journey begins. As I learned to use words as instruments of light, I began to realize some things cannot be sent through silence alone. There are moments when energy needs to be wrapped in sound, so it can reach deeper into the emotional layers of the world. That was when I understood why words, when they carry the vibration of the soul, can transform reality. That evening, I found myself in a tense conversation. Two people, two egos, two streams of energy clashing. The space heated up like an uncontrolled flame. I could hear my heartbeat quicken, see sparks of frustration in the other person's eyes. In that moment, it felt as though the entire room trembled with chaotic frequencies, every word like a blade slicing through the air. But then, in the middle of that storm, I remembered the lesson of stillness. The energy you put out is the energy the world reflects back. I took a deep breath, centered myself, and began to speak. Not to win, not to prove a point, but to bring peace. Each word came out slowly, clearly. I understand. I'm listening. We're both just trying to be heard. Something shifted. As the sound left my lips, I could feel it moving like waves of light. No longer just words, but frequencies of reconciliation. The thick tension in the air began to dissolve. The person across from me looked up. Their eyes softened. Their voice, though still firm, had started to ease. I continued, gentler now. I choose peace. I choose love. Those words seemed to carry a weight that wasn't mine, as if a higher power had borrowed my voice to speak. And somehow, when I stopped talking, the whole room fell silent. No more arguments, just the sound of breath, slow and steady like the wind. I remembered a verse from the Bible. The tongue has the power of life and death. Proverbs 18:21. I understood then words truly can give life or bring destruction. Every syllable, every sound is a seed. If we speak from anger, we plant pain. If we speak with faith, we plant light. In that moment, I felt a warm energy flow from my throat, like a soft current moving through the air. Everyone in the room began to relax. The tension melted like morning mist in sunlight. The other person lowered their gaze, voice quieter now. I'm sorry. Maybe I've been too tense. I smiled, not a smile of victory, but a smile of realization that true power doesn't lie in what we say, but in the energy we carry within our words. From that day, I began to practice speaking with mindfulness. Before each sentence, I took a deep breath, opened my heart, and allowed the energy to flow through me like a flute. My words no longer came from my mind, but from my soul, and everything began to shift. Conversations that once felt heavy became light as clouds. Workplace conflicts dissolved without debate. There was even a time when I simply said, "Everything's going to be okay." And it was. Not because I'm special, but because I spoke in harmony with the source. When we align with the frequency of God, our words become more than language. They become healing light. I call it spoken light. When you speak with faith and kindness, your words don't just echo through the air, they reach the deepest parts of someone's soul. Like when a mother whispers, "It'll be okay," to her child, and the child believes not because they understand the meaning, but because they feel the love inside it. This world is thirsty for words like that. In a time where everyone wants to be heard, perhaps what the world needs most is people who know how to speak light. When you speak from a pure heart, you don't need to convince anyone. The energy moves on its own. It reaches, it touches, it spreads, it bypasses logic and speaks directly to the soul, the part of us that recognizes truth before the mind can grasp it. Maybe that's why in the Bible the first words God spoke in creating the world were, "Let there be light," and there was light. I often wonder, maybe that light wasn't just physical. Maybe it was the light of sacred speech, the divine word, that began the universe. Since then, I've stopped seeing words as tools for conversation. I see them now as instruments for tuning the frequency of reality. A sincere thank you can lift the energy of an entire space. A heartfelt, "I'm sorry," can dissolve years of pain. And sometimes, just one, "I believe in you," can rescue a soul on the edge of darkness. When you understand this, you begin to choose your words carefully, not out of fear, but because you know that each word holds power. Now, before every important conversation, I don't write a script. I place my hand over my heart, close my eyes, and whisper, "May my words carry the energy of peace." And always, the universe responds with peace. Because words can melt the ice in someone else's heart, but only if they're born from warmth within ours. That night, as the moment passed, I stepped outside. The sky was full of stars. I saw each one like a word from God, scattered across the heavens, countless points of light, telling one single story. the story of sacred sound. I inhaled, letting the night breeze flow through my hair, carrying with it the echo of what I had just learned. If silence is the doorway into the sacred, then words are the stream of light that passes through that door to illuminate the world. And in that soft glow, I felt my soul open wide, ready to step into the next chapter where gesture, movement, and every breath become language of power. Since that night, I began to pay attention to every movement I made. The way I raised my hand, nodded, touched an object, each carried its own energy. I realized the body is also a language, and when the soul awakens, the body becomes an instrument through which the universe plays its music, one subtle gesture at a time. One morning, I sat in a meeting room surrounded by strangers. The air was heavy, as if the tension could explode at any moment from the clash of opinions. Amid the wary glances, I sat still and calm. My fingers lightly touched the necklace around my neck, a subconscious habit I often turned to when I needed grounding. But this time, something was different. I could feel the energy of intention flowing through my fingertips into that small object resting against my skin. The necklace grew warm, almost vibrated. I closed my eyes for a second and whispered into it a simple message: peace, agreement, trust. When I opened my eyes, I met the gaze of the man sitting across from me. A moment ago, he had been rigid and resistant, but suddenly his tone softened, and he gave me space to speak. The room grew quiet, as if someone had turned down the volume of the world. I spoke slowly and clearly, and something truly strange happened. They began to nod, then agree. I hadn't persuaded them. I had simply poured my energy into a gesture. Every time I touched the necklace, it was like I was tuning the frequency of the room. When the meeting ended, I walked out feeling light, not because of victory, but because I had discovered something deeper. Intention, when embedded in action, becomes a signal the soul can feel. Since then, I've practiced using what I call an anchored gesture. For me, it's placing my hand on my heart whenever I need to reconnect with Source. For you, it might be a smile, a look, or a particular way of breathing. The gesture itself doesn't matter. What matters is the meaning you put into it. Each time you repeat that gesture, you activate energy within yourself, like pressing a call button to a higher dimension. The Bible says, "I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With him at my right hand, I will not be shaken." Psalm 16:8. When I keep God before me, meaning I place him in every movement, even the smallest motion becomes a prayer. I started trying this in my daily life. When I touched a glass of water, I thought, "Thank you." When I opened a door, I thought, "Hello." When I held someone's hand, I silently whispered, "Peace be with you." Every gesture carried spirit, and the world began to respond in the strangest ways. The barista smiled at me longer than usual. A stranger offered help without reason. Everything began to flow more smoothly, as if I had discovered life's hidden rhythm. And then, one day, I realized something even deeper. The body doesn't just send energy out, it receives it too. When I opened up, stood tall, and breathed deeply, it was like streams of light poured in through the top of my head, flowing through my entire being. Every cell lit up. I understood then that the body becomes a conduit for spirit. When you stand in that energy, you don't need to speak or do anything special. You simply exist, and the world adjusts around you. I've seen that in people who barely speak, yet when they walk into a room, the energy shifts instantly. They don't command, they don't demand, they simply are. And their presence alone is enough to rearrange the space. Their bodies are not just flesh, they are living temples of light. I began practicing this in silence, standing in front of a mirror, looking into my own eyes, placing my hand on my heart and whispering, "I am where God breathes." Each time I said that, my chest warmed, my eyes lit up, my posture grew straighter, not stiff but aligned. My gaze deepened, not harsh but steady. My body began to remember the energy of presence. And when I stepped outside, I noticed people looked at me differently, not with curiosity, but with a quiet respect. Once again, I started seeing familiar numbers, 440 y 4, on coffee receipts, phone screens, even license plates. I smiled, knowing this was a sign of protection, a message that angels were strengthening the foundation beneath my path. 444, the number of divine grounding, of stability, and faith. A deep gratitude rose in me, like an unseen hand resting on my shoulder, whispering, "Keep going. You are on the right path." If you're hearing this and have seen the number 444 around you, pause for a moment. It's not a coincidence. It's the universe reminding you that you're being protected. Breathe, and remember, invisible hands are guiding you every step of the way. From that day on, I began to treat every movement as an unspoken prayer. When I wrote, I sent goodwill into each word. When I walked, I imagined light flowing into the ground. When I hugged someone, I pictured the light from my heart wrapping around them. I understood that the body is not just a vessel for living, it is the temple of the soul. And if the soul is water, the body is the cup, the form of the energy we carry within. When you live with that awareness, every small act becomes sacred. You are no longer doing, you are simply being. You no longer act from habit, but from presence. And when you truly master the energy in your body, you'll realize that a single touch, a smile, or a glance can change the atmosphere of an entire room. Because in the world of the soul, one gesture holds the entire universe. That afternoon, I stepped out of the office, cool wind brushing through my sleeves, golden sunlight spilling onto the street like liquid honey. I placed my hand on the necklace, not to ask, but to give thanks, grateful that I had remembered. Every action can be a prayer. The last light of day rested on my shoulders, gentle as the invisible hand of the Creator. I knew then a new chapter was unfolding, where glances, posture, and breath become silent commands capable of reaching another soul without a single word. When the soul has learned to speak through gestures, through breath, through hands, the next thing it longs to express is the language of presence, a language without words, yet stronger than any sound, the body language of an awakened soul. That evening, I was invited to a large gathering. Golden light bathed the room full of people. Laughter, conversation, handshakes, everything blended into a stream of energy, both lively and weary. I walked in without trying to make an impression. I was simply there, in my stillness, breathing evenly, heart open, mind clear. Someone was watching me from afar, a man I knew could open a new path for my project. If only he agreed. I didn't approach. I didn't plan a greeting. I simply looked at him, not with the eyes of the mind, but with the gaze of the soul. In that moment, everything seemed to pause. Amid the crowd, energy condensed into the invisible thread between two gazes. There was no show, no clear signal, just recognition. I saw him pause slightly, then smile gently and nod. As I walked by, he approached me first, speaking the very words I had planned to say. I understood instantly. My posture, my gaze, my breath had spoken for me. The body is a transmitter more refined than speech. When your energy is steady, trust and sincerity radiate naturally, drawing others in without them knowing why. You don't need to convince they can feel it. I once heard a teacher say, when you stand in the right place energetically, everything will revolve around you like planets around the Sunday. I laughed then, thinking it was just a metaphor. But now I understand. That night in the room, I did nothing. Yet people gradually turned toward me. I remained still and sincere. Everything else adjusted on its own. The volume lowered. The conversation slowed. The heartbeat of the world aligned to one rhythm. When you live in that kind of balance, your energy becomes a silent command, not controlling, not demanding, just a presence that helps others remember the peace within themselves. I looked around and saw softened faces, shoulders relaxing. People leaned in closer, speaking more gently. The atmosphere shifted, like an invisible breeze had passed through. I knew then, the soul was working through the body. A thought arose. If a single gaze can invite calm, what happens when the entire body becomes a living prayer? That question led me to a deeper practice. I began to train in conscious presence. Every morning I stood in front of a mirror, straightened my back, breathed in, and looked into my own eyes. I imagined light flowing through my forehead, into my heart, through my hands, and into every cell. I said nothing. I simply inhabited my body fully. And as I stepped out into the world, I noticed people reacting differently. They looked back at me, smiled, or stepped aside with ease. Not because I was special, but because my energy was sending a message. I am at peace. You are safe. That is how the soul's body language works. It doesn't command, it invites. It doesn't force, it resonates. When your soul is shining, Other souls are drawn to that light like pollen drifting towards sunlight. The body, when guided by the soul, becomes a lighthouse of God. Just by standing in that light, the world finds its way. I remembered a number that had appeared often lately, 777. First on a small receipt, then on a roadside billboard, and later, in a dream, 3 golden beams of light moving across the sky. When I awoke, I understood. 777 is the number of soul awakening, of cosmic mysteries being revealed. It is a reminder that you are stepping into a higher level, no longer influencing through effort, but through presence. If you've been seeing 777 inches your life, pause for a moment. It may be an invitation. Trust the light within you. Let it lead. And if you feel resonance, share that light, because every awakened soul vibrates the great thread that connects all of humanity. I gently closed my eyes, feeling golden light surrounding me like a soft veil. My body seemed to blend into the space. I could no longer tell where I ended and the world began. All that remained was one rhythm, life breathing with me. I knew I was living in the purest moment of connection, not through words, not through action, but through complete presence. In the whisper of the night breeze, I heard a voice from within. When you are fully present, you no longer need to try to influence anyone, you become the influence. And I understood this is the essence of the journey. Not to control others, but to become a mirror that reflects the light they already carry. The light in me awakens the light in them. And so, through a gaze, through breath, through silence, the world begins to heal. As I left the gathering, the sky wrapped the city in a soft blue glow. I looked up, heart full of gratitude. My body no longer felt like me. It was a channel through which God could speak, breathe, see, and love. And as I walked through the street, I knew the journey wasn't over. Another door still awaited a place where not only your gaze, but even your dreams become a bridge from one soul to another. At night, when the world falls asleep, the soul begins to open doors we cannot walk through in daylight. I used to think dreams were just a jumble of the mind's scattered memories, until I realized they were the language of the light realm, where thoughts break free from the limits of matter and reach into another soul. That night, the sky was dark, moonless. I sat by the window, listening to the sound of rain, like the breath of the earth. In my heart appeared the image of an old friend, someone lost in their choices, caught in the spiral of fear and doubt. I couldn't call, I couldn't intervene. There was only one path: to send a whisper through the dream. I turned off the light and meditated in the dark. My breath slowed. The world dissolved into silence. I called that friend's image to me, imagining the two of us standing in a silver-lit field. We didn't speak. We just looked at each other. I sent them energy, clarity, trust. A white light from my heart spread out and wrapped us both in stillness. From deep within, I heard a whisper, like an ancient breeze from the soul. Follow the light. Do not be afraid. In my sleep, I found myself in another space, familiar, yet foreign. Everything shimmered. The line between real and dream dissolved. I saw my friend, lost in a dark field. I walked over and placed a hand on their shoulder. No words, just the warmth of energy, like a gentle current touching the heart. Light spread. Darkness retreated. When they turned to look at me, their eyes were clear, not confused, but calm. I knew the dream had fulfilled its purpose. The next morning, my phone lit up with a message. Last night, I dreamed of you. You walked me through a field and said, "Believe." It's strange, but I woke up knowing what I have to do. I smiled. Not because I was surprised, but because once again, the universe had confirmed. Thought can travel through dreams. Dreams are not illusions. They are soul fields where energy meets, where we send messages beyond words. I remembered the verse in Job 33:15. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on people, God opens their ears and seals his instructions. Yes, dreams are where God opens the ears of the soul. When we sleep, the thin veil of logic dissolves, and deeper truths can enter. I began to understand that every night, as we close our eyes, the soul leaves the body and returns to the great river of the universe. There, we meet those we love, those in need, and parts of ourselves still waiting to be healed. Dreams never lie, they simply reflect the energy that is already moving. One night, I dreamed of hundreds of souls, walking down a silver path, each holding a candle. I didn't know who they were, but I could feel they were all connected by one thread of light, the light of awakening. I believe those who are called carry this gift, to connect through dreams, not to control, but to guide, to lift each other. When you hold an intention in your heart before sleep, a prayer, a vision, a longing, that energy is sent out like an arrow of light into the soul space of the one you're thinking of. If your heart is pure, they will receive it. They may not remember, but they will feel it, a new idea, a feeling of being held, a sudden return of faith after years of emptiness. When you learn to send thoughts through dreams, you begin to realize time and space are only thin curtains. Beyond them, all souls are connected, conversing, guiding one another in silence. Sometimes you may dream of a stranger, looking at you with familiar eyes, saying something before vanishing. Don't dismiss it as imagination. It may very well be a soul companion delivering the message you needed. I've had dreams like that. Someone in a white robe handed me a golden book and said, "When you understand, you'll know how to open it." I woke up still hearing their voice echoing inside me. In the days that followed, I realized each dream was a chapter of that book, an invisible manuscript written by the hand of God. In the language of intuition, when we learn how to read it, life begins to reveal its hidden order. The people we meet, the places we go, even the challenges, they're all symbols guiding us back to our inner light. If you've ever dreamed of flying, it wasn't fantasy, it was your soul remembering its freedom. If you've dreamed of speaking with someone who has passed, it was a connection beyond the veil of matter. And if you've dreamed of light or heard whispers of comfort, know that angels were near. I started writing down my dreams every morning and discovered something miraculous. When we record them, we strengthen the bridge between the material world and the soul realm. Each word becomes an invitation for divine memory to enter consciousness. And the more I wrote, the clearer the dreams became, as if the universe was rejoicing, saying, "At last you are listening." Now, when I lay my head on the pillow, I no longer see it as sleep, but as a journey home, a place where I reunite with familiar souls, send my prayers, and learn that every true connection begins in silence. When dawn arrives and the first light touches my eyes, I know a new chapter has begun, the chapter of waking life. A chapter where not only dreams, but the very aura around us carries the power to shape the world. There are moments when you walk into a room and everyone pauses, though no one knows why. It's not your appearance, it's not your words, it's energy, something invisible, light is sent, but powerful enough to shift the entire space. I call it aura, the radiance of an awakening soul. I first recognized this when I entered a meeting filled with conflict. Voices were raised like blades. The room felt locked inside a cloud of black smoke, heavy, cold, suffocating. I said nothing. I simply stood still. I took a deep breath, feeling golden light at the center of my chest, and exhaled slowly. In my mind, I whispered, "Peace, come in." I don't know why, but the energy began to shift. The voices slowed. Arguments stopped mid-sentence. Someone coughed, then silence. I kept standing there, doing nothing, just letting my aura expand, like a soft mist filling the room. I imagined it as a warm veil, touching each tense soul, calming them. Then someone whispered, "Maybe we should take a step back." Another nodded. The meeting, once a storm, became still as a quiet lake. I smiled, not from triumph, but from witnessing the power of presence. Aura isn't something you create. It's something you remember. It has always been there, waiting for you to release the layers of fear, anger, and doubt, so your true light can shine. When you let go, your aura returns, like the sun breaking through the clouds. In that moment, I understood that each person carries a unique energy field. It reflects what we think, what we feel, what we believe. Anxious people carry cold gray. Angry ones, sharp red. Loving hearts radiate gold or soft pink. And awakened souls, when their spirit becomes transparent, shine a light others naturally gravitate toward. I remembered the words from Psalm 27:1. "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" That light isn't somewhere far away. It lives in each of us, in our breath, in our gaze, in the way we show up. When we remember our inner light, fear dissolves, and the world begins to reflect that same energy back to us. After that day, I began observing my own aura. Some days it glowed, other days it dimmed. Whenever dark emotions surfaced, I could feel my light fade. I didn't resist. I simply sat still, breathed deeply, and imagined myself bathing in a sea of white light. As breath met intention, my aura opened again like a flower waking to the morning dew. The more I practiced, the more I could feel the energy fields around others. Some souls, even in silence, carried a sky of calm with them. Just being near them brought peace. Others smiled on the surface, but left the room feeling heavy, because inside, they were still fighting. When you learn to see through the soul's eyes, you stop judging. You begin to understand. You realize their light isn't gone, it's just covered, and instead of reacting, you choose to shine brighter, so they can see their reflection in your light. That's how awakened souls heal the world, not through advice or reasoning, but through frequency. During that time, I kept seeing the number 777 on clocks, signs, even in dreams. I knew it wasn't random. 777 is the number of soul, awakening a symbol for those stepping into higher awareness, where the light within begins to spill outward. When this number appears, I understand that the aura is no longer just a glow around the body. It becomes a living field of light, influencing the entire environment. I remembered in the Bible when Moses came down from the mountain. His face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. That radiance was aura, the mark of a soul unified with divine light. If you're hearing this and find yourself seeing the number 777 often, your soul may be opening. It's an invitation to trust your light. Let it shine without fear of being seen. True light never dominates, it simply reveals. I want you to try something. At sunset, stand still, take a deep breath, and imagine a golden sphere of light at the center of your chest. As you exhale, let that light expand beyond your body, wrapping around you like a warm mist. Then picture it spreading through the room, to those you love, even to those you once resented. In that moment, you're expanding your aura, becoming the center of peace in your own little universe. And if something stirs in you a feeling of recognition, as if your soul has just been touched, share it. Leave a comment. Speak the number or sign that resonates with you. Because when you acknowledge the light in yourself, you help light up someone else. I remember, at the end of that meeting, a colleague approached and softly said, "When you stood there, it felt like the room got brighter." I smiled and said nothing, because I knew the light didn't come from me. It moved through me. That afternoon, as I stepped out of the building, the sunlight poured down, casting a pale golden glow over my shoulders. For a moment, I felt myself merging with the light, no boundary between self and sky. I understood then. This is the miracle of presence. When the soul becomes a source of light, the world becomes its mirror. And as I walked down that sunlit path, I knew the journey wasn't over. There was still one secret waiting ahead, a secret hidden in silence, where all light is born, where thoughts need no sound for the universe to listen. There is one thing I have come to realize after all those mystical experiences. When words, gestures, glance, and aura have all spoken, there remains another language stronger than all silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of one who knows there is no need to prove anything. That morning, I sat in a crowded cafe. The voices, the clatter of coffee machines, cups clinking, it all blended into a cacophony. But within me, there was only one still space. No effort, no trying to meditate, just stillness. Then I noticed those around me began to slow. The woman beside me softened her tone. The barista looked up and smiled. No one knew why, but the air of the cafe lightened. I sat there in quiet, yet my frequency shifted the whole room. I understood. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of pure energy. When you are silent, you don't disappear. You become a mirror, and the world begins to reflect the energy you carry. Once I attended a meeting full of heated debate. Everyone wanted their voice to dominate. I did not participate. I only observed. Gradually, one by one, people began to look toward me, as if seeking a center amid the turbulence. When they quieted, I still had not said a word. I simply smiled, my gaze soft. In that moment, the whole room slipped into silence. It wasn't that I forced them quiet. My silence awakened their own stillness within. I recall Ecclesiastes 3:7. There is a time to be silent and a time to speak. When the soul attains understanding, it knows when to speak and when to let spirit speak through it. Silence is where God dwells. It is the foundation of all highest vibration. When you are still enough, you hear what the noisy world cannot hear. Whispers of spirit, guidance of the cosmos, and the voice of your own soul. In those moments, I often feel something shifting around me. Light as wind, yet powerful like a hidden river. Other souls begin to harmonize with me, without invitation. The angry soften, the anxious become calm. I merely sit, and my thoughts breathe within their minds. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still, and know that I am God." I understand that now more deeply than ever. When we are still, we do not depart from God, we become one with Him. And then, no small self struggles to control. Only His energy flows through us. Everything becomes effortless conversations. Work, decisions, all flow into perfect order without needing our arrangements. I call that moment silent command. Because it is not passive. It is the silence that causes the world to listen. Like when the sea lies still, the wind stalls, and birds fly low. That is the silence of one who holds power without display. I remember once, during a heated argument, someone asked, "Why don't you say anything? Do you think you know everything?" I looked at them, remained silent, then gently shook my head. A few seconds later, their voice lowered. Then, they bowed their head. I don't know what they understood, but I knew they heard not my words, but the energy carried by my silence. Because, in that silence, I am no longer sending messages from the mind, but from a heart cleansed of the need to prove. When we stop needing to be right, stop needing more, stop needing to be heard, we begin to truly listen. And when we truly listen, Spirit begins to speak through us. In that moment, I saw once again a familiar number on my phone. 999. I understood it as a sign. 999 is a number of completion, of a cycle closing, so a new one may begin. The universe is telling me that an old chapter is ending, not the journey, but the worn-out self. I smiled. Because truly, I am no longer the one striving to control others' thoughts like in the beginning. Now I only seek to attune the pulse of my own soul to the heartbeat of the whole. If you hear this, perhaps you too sense something. Silence expanding in your chest, like warm water cleansing away the dust of the world. Do not resist it. Let it pass through you. Let silence become your soul's sacred song. Because, in silence, we no longer seek signals from outside. We become the signal. We stop waiting for light to come. We become the light. When I left the cafe that day, the morning sun shone on my face. The city sounds engines, wind, footsteps seemed to harmonize, as though all were breathing together. I knew that was the fruit of inner stillness. No need to try to change the world. Just be still. For when the soul is still, everything else finds its own right rhythm. And in that absolute silence, I felt another door opening, no longer a path of control or influence, but of creation and responsibility, where we learn to use the power granted to us, not to dominate, but to serve. When silence has become a natural breath, I begin to hear clearly something I once missed. Power is not for possession, but for giving. What we call influence, authority, or control are only outer shells of something more sacred, the mission to serve light. I realized this on a pristine morning. Before the sun had fully touched the city, I sat quietly, observing dewdrops glistening on leaves, hearing birds awakening, and suddenly I understood. All I had learned from thought, gaze, words, gesture, to silence converged to one point, to become a channel of love. I once believed power was the ability to make the world shift to my will. Now I know true power is when the world changes, because it senses the love flowing from me. I recall the times I sent intentions, guided emotions, and caused others to act by the energy I projected. Back then, I thought it was authority. Now, looking back, I see it was training to help me realize this. Any power without compassion is only dust. And in that moment of insight, I felt a soft shift in my heart. No longer energy of will, but energy of surrender. I no longer wish to control others' thoughts. I only wish for them to be free to find their light, to be loved without fear. Because when a soul awakens, that light spreads like ripples, touching hundreds, thousands of other souls, gently yet deeply. I recall Psalm 82:6. I said, "You are God's. You are all children of the Most High. We are not weak creatures seeking miracles from outside. We are the miracle seeking to remember itself. And when we remember, we no longer need to prove power, we simply live in it, as naturally as light knows how to shine. That day, I walked outside. Everything seemed more alive than ever before. Trees greener, breeze softer. Every person passing by had their own faint glow. I realized each soul bears a fragment of God. All I needed was to see it with eyes of compassion, and everything becomes sacred. When I smiled at a vendor, they smiled back. When I looked at a child racing by, the child stopped and beamed a bright smile. I did nothing. I was simply there, heart open, letting light flow through me and touch the world. I suddenly understood. Perhaps this is why we were given the power of thought, not to manipulate, but to heal, not to force submission, but to remind others they share the same inner light. This is the real meaning of the chosen ones. They are not chosen to dominate, but to guide, not to be above others, but to reflect God's light on earth. When we live with that intention, every breath becomes a prayer. Every small act holds the mark of sacred love. When we speak, our words heal. When we are silent, our presence soothes. When we gaze, our eyes open a path for others to find themselves. And once more, the number 111 appeared. On a receipt, on a clock, on the road. I stopped and smiled. I understood this is the seal of a new beginning. A sign that one cycle is complete and another door is opening. 111 is the universe's call. Remember, you are co-creator with me. If you see this number, understand it's not random. The universe is inviting you into the role of a creator, not by power, but by conscious love. If you feel its energy, share it. Speak the number that resonates most with you. Because when you speak, you activate your own energy, the energy of one chosen. I walked on, and in my heart arose a silent prayer. May the power in me become a blessing for the world. For power we receive, if unshared, becomes a burden. But power used to uplift becomes light that never fades. As sunset fell, I stood by the riverbank. The water mirrored the pink-orange sky. In its reflection, I saw not just my face, but the faces of many, all bearing the same light, the same origin. I folded my hands in gratitude, because I understood the journey is never about me becoming powerful. It's about letting God in me shine. And as the sun dipped behind the trees, the wind carrying the scent of damp earth and blossoms, I heard the whisper in my heart, when you use power to serve, you have returned home. I knew I had neared the end of the journey where blessing is light, and ending is not farewell, but a prayer laid upon all those who are listening. Twilight falls. The city lies, wrapped in the soft glow of dusk, where the boundary between day and night melts like two souls, rediscovering themselves. I walk slowly, breathing in the scent of damp earth after rain, hearing the wind whisper through the trees. Everything around me seems to sing a song only a quiet heart can hear. And then I understand. This journey is not about seeking power, but about coming home. I have traversed many layers of awareness: thought, intention, visualization, meditation, speech, gesture, aura, and silence. Each layer unfolded like petals, leading my soul back to its core, the place where the original light never went out. In the past, I believed awakening meant attaining power to make the world bend to my will. Now, looking back, I see awakening as actually the dissolution of ego, so that the true light within us can shine unobstructed. That light needs no proof, seeks no chase. It waits for us to remember. And when we do, the world shifts not because we change it, but because we begin to see it as it truly is. I sit by the riverside, water shimmering with pale lavender sky. A vastness fills me, as though every speck of dust around holds a soul. Each leaf's fall, every ripple is the breath of the Creator speaking in the quietest tongue. I whisper from the depths, "You are light within light. You are breath within my breath." At that moment, warmth radiates through me. I no longer feel myself, only light breathing through this form. I recall Psalm 36:9. "For with you is the fountain of life. In your light we see light." Yes, in His light I perceive light in all beings. The beggar by the road, he is there. The colleague who once hurt me, he is there. Even I, with my errors and pride, he is there, learning to recognize himself through each experience. I understand now. There is no boundary between holy and profane, between light and darkness. Darkness is merely an unrecognized light. Whenever we shine compassion on it, darkness dissolves not by force, but by illumination. The world becomes strangely simple. I no longer need to seek meaning in big questions. I only need to live, breathe, and love in each small moment. For light is not in the destination, but in every step we take. Once someone asked me, "After all, what is the truest thing you've learned?" I answered simply, that love is not an emotion, it is the energy of life. When you allow love to move through you, you don't need miracles, because you are the miracle. I remember the prophetic numbers that have followed me. 111, the sign of a new beginning, the invitation to step into the role of creator. 444, the sacred foundation, protection from above. 777, the soul's opening, mysteries of the universe revealed. These 3 seals have guided me through long nights. And now, looking back, I know they're not just for me, but for anyone hearing these words, whose heart stirs in resonance. If you've ever seen one of those numbers appear repeatedly on a clock, a receipt, a license plate, no, this is no coincidence. It is the universe calling you, reminding you, you too are chosen. If one of those numbers resonates most with you, share it not as ritual, but as a sacred act, affirming that you have awakened. I glance at the river's reflection, shimmering in the sunset. But this time, I do not see one person. I see thousands of faces, souls I have met, sent light to, received healing from, all merging as one. And I hear a gentle whisper in my heart, you are never alone. You are part of us, and we are one. A tear falls on my cheek not from sorrow, but from a soul recognizing its home. I gently close my eyes, let the wind merge with the rhythm of my heart. Deep within, I know the journey is complete. Nothing left to prove, nothing left to attain. Only light returning to light. And once more, I whisper my closing prayer. May every soul awaken. May every thought become prayer. May every word carry the frequency of peace. May my heart become a dwelling place for you. The wind sighs its response. The night sky begins to brighten with first stars. I feel myself merge into the cosmos, tiny yet infinite. And I know our journey never truly ends because light has no stopping point. It only changes shape, changes direction, to continue illuminating where needed most. If you're hearing these words, know that you too carry that light. You were chosen not because you're perfect, but because your heart still responds to love, compassion, and truth. Live like light, speak like light, love like light. And when you walk in darkness, remember, even a single ray is enough to help the night find its way back to dawn. Blessings be with you. If you feel moved, share the sacred number you resonate with: 111, 444, or 777, so the universe knows you are ready to step into your own light. Grateful that you chose to spend these moments in the light of this story. If it touched your soul, please like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell so the next whisper of light may find its way back to you.